Hey everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into an exciting new video exploring the crossover of two iconic universes. What if Itachi Uchiha from Naruto found himself in the world of One Piece? Imagine the powerful Sharingan and Itachi's incredible skills as he navigates the Grand Line. How would he interact with the Straw Hat crew? What challenges would he face from the Marines and other pirates? We'll discuss potential alliances, epic battles, and how his unique abilities could change the dynamics of One Piece. So grab your straw hats and let's set sail on this wild adventure. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay updated on our latest content. Let's get started. Itachi Uchiha's vision blurred as he staggered backward. His final battle with Sasuke had taken everything from him. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, and his body screamed in agony. The sky was dark, thunderous clouds swirling ominously above the two brothers. Sasuke, panting heavily, stood opposite Itachi, his Sharingan blazing with determination and rage. The air crackled with the residual energy of their jutsus, the ground around them scorched and torn apart. "Is this really what you wanted, Itachi?" Sasuke shouted, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. Itachi, breathing heavily, managed a faint smile. "Sasuke, you've become strong. This is it." With the last of his strength, Itachi walked towards his brother. Sasuke flinched, readying himself for another attack, but Itachi merely extended a trembling hand. He reached out and tapped Sasuke's forehead gently, just as he had done when they were children. "Forgive me, Sasuke. This is the end," Itachi whispered, his voice barely audible. As his sight dimmed, Itachi collapsed, the world around him fading to black. He believed he had met his end, but his journey was far from over. Sasuke knelt beside his fallen brother, his expression a mixture of grief and confusion. The weight of their shared history bore down on him as he looked upon Itachi's still form. The echoes of their clashes, their conversations, and the unspoken truths reverberated in his mind. "You were always protecting me," Sasuke muttered, his voice choked with emotion. "Why, Itachi? Why did it have to end like this?" But there were no answers now, only the solemn silence of the battlefield. The storm above them began to dissipate, leaving behind a somber calmness that contrasted sharply with the violence that had just transpired. Drifting in the void, Itachi felt weightless, his consciousness floating in a sea of darkness. Time seemed to stretch into eternity, and he pondered his fate. Was this death? Was he destined to wander this black void forever? Just as despair began to grip his heart, a piercing light broke through the darkness. Itachi squinted, shielding his eyes from the sudden brightness. Gradually, the light grew, enveloping him completely. He felt a strange sensation of falling before he was suddenly submerged in cold water. He gasped, flailing as he fought to reach the surface. The new world. Breaking through, he found himself lying on a sandy shore, the gentle waves lapping at his feet. He blinked, disoriented, and slowly sat up. He couldn't believe his eyes. He had expected to be in hell, paying for his sins, but instead, he was here. Wherever here was. The sky above was a brilliant blue, with fluffy white clouds drifting lazily. The scent of salt water filled the air, mingling with the sweet aroma of nearby tropical flowers. Palm trees swayed gently in the breeze, their fronds rustling softly. Itachi looked down at his reflection in the clear, azure water. His face, once gaunt and sickly from his illness, now appeared healthy and revitalized. His Sharingan activated out of habit, and to his astonishment, his Mangekyo Sharingan was still intact. Even more shocking was the absence of the debilitating disease that had plagued him for so long. Feeling a strange sense of rebirth, Itachi decided to gather information about his surroundings. He needed to understand where he was if he was to start anew. As he walked towards a nearby city, he noticed something peculiar. People were riding on sea horses, a sight he had never seen before. Gathering information. Curious, he approached a local fisherman, an older man with weathered skin and a straw hat. The man was busy unloading fish from his small boat. "Excuse me," Itachi began, his voice calm and measured. "Can you tell me where I am?" The fisherman looked up, eyes widening slightly at Itachi's unusual attire. "You're in Water 7, young man. Famous for its shipbuilding." "Water 7. Itachi repeated, the name unfamiliar to him. "And these, sea orzes?" The fisherman chuckled. Sea orzes are a common sight here. Faster and more reliable than regular horses on land." Itachi furrowed his brow. "I've never heard of this place. What can you tell me about its significance?" The fisherman paused, studying Itachi's face. "You must be a long way from home. Water 7 is known for building the finest ships in the world. It's where the legendary shipwrights work, and it's said that Gold Roger's ship was built here." Itachi's confusion deepened. "Gold Roger?" The fisherman nodded. The Pirate King. He found the greatest treasure, the One Piece. You really must be from far away if you don't know about him." "I see," Itachi said, processing the information. "Thank you for your help." The fisherman nodded, his curiosity about Itachi evident but unspoken. "You're welcome, young man. If you need anything, feel free to ask. Name's Jiro, by the way." "Thank you, Jiro," Itachi replied with a slight bow. "I am Itachi Uchiha." Leaving the fisherman, Itachi made his way to the area known for shipwrecks. There, he found a building labeled Galley Law Company. Outside stood a man with a prominent nose and a well-built frame, dressed in a dark blue suit with a white shirt underneath. His hair was neatly combed, and he had a confident air about him. The locals had mentioned a man named Iceberg, the head of shipbuilding here. Itachi approached him, introducing himself. "Excuse me, are you Iceberg?" The man looked up from his work and nodded. "Yes, I am. How can I help you?" "My name is Itachi Uchiha. I seem to have found myself in a place I am unfamiliar with and was hoping to gather some information," Itachi explained. Iceberg's assistant, a woman with bright pink hair tied up in a ponytail and wearing a white blouse with a green skirt, watched him curiously. "You're not from around here, are you?" she asked. Itachi shook his head. "No, I'm not. I come from a different land." Iceberg studied Itachi for a moment before nodding. "Come inside. We can talk more comfortably there." They entered Iceberg's office, a spacious room filled with blueprints, models of ships, and various nautical instruments. Iceberg gestured for Itachi to sit, then poured them both a cup of tea. "Itachi, you said you're not from here. What exactly do you want to know?" Iceberg asked, taking a sip of his tea. Itachi hesitated for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "I want to know about this world. Its people, its history, its power structures." Iceberg raised an eyebrow. "That's quite a broad request. But I'll do my best to explain. We are currently in Water 7, one of the premier shipbuilding locations in the world. This world is divided into various seas, each with its own unique characteristics and challenges. The most significant powers are the world government and the pirates." "Pirates?" Itachi echoed, intrigued. "Yes. Pirates play a major role in this world. They seek freedom, adventure, and often treasure. The most famous pirate was Gold Roger, the king of the pirates. He discovered the greatest treasure, known as the One Piece," Iceberg explained. Itachi absorbed the information, nodding slowly. "And the world government? They are the ruling authority, enforcing laws and maintaining order. They have their own powerful forces, including the Marines. It's a complex world, filled with conflict and alliances," Iceberg continued. As the hours passed, the two men found common ground and formed a tentative friendship. Itachi didn't reveal his true origins, but Iceberg could sense there was something unusual about him. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion outside. Stepping out, they saw a boy with a straw hat, a girl with orange hair, and a long-nosed man causing a ruckus. The boy was shouting excitedly about something, drawing the attention of the entire dock. The boy with the straw hat wore a red vest and blue shorts, his messy black hair sticking out from underneath his signature hat. He had a wide grin on his face and an infectious energy about him. The girl had bright orange hair and wore a white and blue striped shirt with a short denim skirt. She looked exasperated but amused. The long-nosed man wore a green tunic and had a distinctive green bandana tied around his head. "Who are they?" Itachi asked, intrigued by the lively trio. Iceberg frowned slightly. "I'm not sure. They look like pirates, but I don't recognize them." As they watched, the boy with the straw hat continued to shout, "Iceberg! We need our ship repaired." Iceberg's eyes narrowed. "That's Monkey D. Luffy. He's been making waves recently. He's the captain of the Straw Hat Pirates." Luffy waved his arms energetically. "Iceberg! Please fix the Going Merry. We can't sail without her." The girl with the orange hair stepped forward, her eyes pleading. "Please, Mr. Iceberg. The Going Merry means everything to us." Itachi's interest was piqued. A new world, new faces, and new challenges. Perhaps this was his chance to start over, to find a new purpose. Iceberg sighed, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. All right. Bring her over, and we'll take a look." Luffy's face lit up with a beaming smile. "Thank you so much, Iceberg. You're the best." As the Straw Hat Pirates moved to bring their ship to the dock, Itachi watched them with a sense of curiosity and admiration. This world was vastly different from his own, but he could sense the same underlying currents of hope, struggle, and determination. Itachi stood by the dock, watching as the Galley Law Company workers inspected the Going Merry. Luffy, his new captain, bounded over with a wide grin. "Itachi! Welcome to the crew!" Luffy exclaimed, slapping Itachi on the back. Itachi smiled warmly. "Thank you, Luffy. I'm honored to be here." Luffy turned to his crewmates, who had gathered nearby. "Hey guys, this is Itachi. He's joining our crew." The crew cheered, welcoming Itachi with open arms. Usopp, with his characteristic enthusiasm, clapped Itachi on the shoulder. "Glad to have you aboard. You look like you can handle yourself." Nami, the navigator, approached with a calculating gaze. "Welcome, Itachi. I hope you're ready for some exciting adventures." Itachi nodded, feeling a sense of camaraderie he hadn't felt in a long time. "I'm looking forward to it." Luffy pointed towards a corner where a man with green hair and a bandana lay napping against a wall, his swords resting beside him. "That's Zoro," Luffy said with a grin. "He's our swordsman. He's probably taking a nap before we set sail again." Itachi studied Zoro curiously. The swordsman looked formidable even in repose, with a muscular build and an air of quiet strength. His swords gleamed in the fading light, a testament to his skill and dedication. Luffy nudged Zoro with his foot. "Hey, Zoro. Wake up. We have a new crewmate." Zoro stirred awake, blinking sleepily before focusing on Itachi and Luffy. His gaze was sharp, assessing the newcomer with a hint of curiosity. "I'm Roronoa Zoro," he said in a gruff voice, his tone neutral but attentive. "Itachi Uchiha," Itachi replied calmly, extending a hand in greeting. Zoro nodded, clasping Itachi's hand firmly. "Welcome to the crew. Make sure you pull your weight." Itachi smiled faintly. "I intend to." Luffy looked around eagerly. "I want to introduce you to everyone, but Robin, Sanji, and Chopper aren't here right now." They went to pick up some supplies from the market. Itachi nodded understandingly. That's all right. I'm sure I'll meet them soon enough. As the sun began to set over Water 7, Itachi stood with the Straw Hat Pirates, feeling a new sense of purpose and belonging. He knew that this was just the beginning of their journey together, and he couldn't wait to see where their adventures would take them. The news hit the crew hard. Luffy, Zoro, Nami, Usopp, and Itachi stood on the deck of the Going Merry, looking at the ship with heavy hearts. The shipwrights had confirmed their worst fears: the Merry was beyond repair. "We can't sail on Merry anymore," Luffy said, his voice heavy with regret. His usually bright and energetic demeanor was dampened, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Nami nodded, her expression serious. "We need a new ship, Luffy. It's the only way we can continue our journey safely." Usopp clenched his fists, his eyes filled with determination and defiance. "No. I can fix her. I don't care what anyone says, I won't give up on Merry." His voice cracked with emotion, and his eyes were wide and desperate. Itachi watched silently, observing the reactions of his new crewmates. He noted Zoro's stoic expression, masking his inner turmoil. Zoro stood with his arms crossed, his jaw tight, as if holding back his own sadness. Nami's practical, albeit saddened, approach contrasted sharply with Usopp's emotional outburst. Luffy, though visibly conflicted, made up his mind. "We have to build a new ship, Usopp. It's the only way we can continue our journey." Usopp's eyes burned with frustration. "You just don't understand, Luffy. Merry is more than just a ship to us. She's our home." His voice rose in pitch, almost pleading. Luffy's fists tightened, his knuckles turning white. "I know, Usopp. But we can't keep sailing on a ship that's falling apart." There was a hint of frustration in his voice, but also a deep sense of responsibility. Usopp glared at Luffy, tears of anger welling up. "You can't just give up on her like this. I won't let you." His hands were shaking, and his whole body seemed tense, ready to explode. The tension was palpable. Itachi, with his sharp perceptiveness, noticed the subtle shifts in everyone's posture and expression. He saw Nami biting her lower lip, her eyes darting between Luffy and Usopp. Zoro's grip on his swords tightened, a silent testament to his readiness to step in if things escalated. Luffy took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "Usopp, I'm not giving up on Merry. She's given us so much, but it's our turn to let her rest. We'll build a new ship in her honor, one that can take us to the end of the Grand Line." Usopp shook his head vigorously. "No, Luffy. You don't get it. You don't understand what Merry means to me, to all of us." His voice was hoarse, and his eyes were red from holding back tears. Sanji and Chopper's arrival. The next morning, as the crew prepared to set out, Sanji and Chopper arrived on the deck. Sanji, always smooth and confident, immediately noticed the tension in the air. The atmosphere was thick with unresolved emotions and unspoken words. "Nami-swan, did you miss me?" Sanji asked with a flirtatious smile, striking a pose. His attempts to lighten the mood were clear, but they fell flat against the somber backdrop. Nami, rolling her eyes, replied, "Now's not the time for that, Sanji." Her tone was gentle but firm, a clear indication that the usual banter would have to wait. Sanji, undeterred, continued his antics, and Itachi watched with curiosity. Zoro, noticing Itachi's interest, decided to introduce him. "Itachi, this is Sanji," Zoro said, gesturing toward the blonde cook. "He's our cook." Sanji turned his attention to Itachi, his eyes narrowing slightly. "And who is this guy?" His voice had a curious edge, assessing the newcomer. Itachi stepped forward and introduced himself. "I'm Itachi Uchiha. I've recently joined the crew." He spoke calmly, his voice carrying a sense of composed strength. Sanji raised an eyebrow, but before he could say anything, his attention was drawn to Chopper, who was hiding behind Nami. The little reindeer was peeking out nervously, clearly feeling the tension as well. "And that's Chopper," Zoro continued. "He's our doctor." Itachi smiled at Chopper. "Are you a reindeer?" he asked, his tone gentle and kind. Chopper's eyes widened in surprise and happiness. "Yes, I am." "How did you know?" His voice was filled with a mix of curiosity and excitement. Itachi chuckled. "It was a lucky guess. You must be a sharp doctor." His compliment was sincere, and it seemed to put Chopper at ease. Chopper, delighted by the compliment, started dancing around and cursing playfully. "I'm not sharp, you're sharp. You're a sharp guy, Itachi." He danced with joy, his earlier shyness forgotten. Sanji, still curious about Itachi, asked, "So, what exactly do you do, Itachi?" There was a hint of skepticism in his voice, as if he were still sizing up the new crew member. "I'm skilled in ninjutsu and other forms of combat," Itachi replied simply, his expression calm and confident. Sanji nodded, accepting the explanation for now. "Well, welcome aboard." His tone was more welcoming now, though the curiosity lingered in his eyes. The news about Robin. The cheerful moment was short-lived as Sanji shared the news about Robin. "There's something else. Robin, she said she won't join us anymore." His voice was heavy with the weight of the news, and the cheerful atmosphere from moments ago vanished. The crew fell silent, shock and disbelief written on their faces. Nami was the first to speak. "How can that be? Robin is our friend." Her voice was filled with a mixture of confusion and concern. Itachi, puzzled, asked, "Robin? Was she one of our crewmates?" His tone was calm, but his eyes showed genuine curiosity. Sanji nodded, his expression serious. "Yes. She joined us not long ago." He ran a hand through his hair, clearly troubled by the news. Itachi thought back to the wanted posters he had seen. "Is she a little girl?" he asked, trying to piece together the information. Nami shook her head. "No, she's older than us. That wanted poster is old. It was from when she was a child." Her voice softened, her thoughts clearly drifting to Robin's troubled past. Itachi's eyes softened with sympathy. "I see. She must have had a difficult past." His tone was filled with understanding, recognizing the weight of Robin's history. Luffy, determined as ever, clenched his fists. "I'll find her and bring her back. Robin is part of our crew, and I'm not giving up on her." His voice was filled with conviction, a promise to his crewmates. The crew smiled at Luffy's resolve, and Itachi gave him a small, approving nod. "We'll support you, Luffy. Whatever it takes." His voice was calm, but it carried a weight of unwavering support. Tension among the crew. Back in the cabin, the tension reached a breaking point. Usopp was beside himself with frustration and sadness. "You're so selfish, Luffy. How can you just abandon Mary like that?" His voice was filled with pain, every word a lash of his frustration. Everyone was shocked by Usopp's words. Luffy was visibly trying to control his anger, and Itachi could sense the rising tension. The air was thick with unspoken emotions, the cabin feeling smaller with each passing second. "Usopp, you're going too far," Itachi said calmly. "I understand your feelings, but you don't understand." Usopp cut him off sharply. "You're new to this crew. You know nothing about how much Mary has done for us." His voice was raw, filled with a sense of betrayal. Luffy, unable to hold back his anger any longer, clenched his fists. "That's enough, Usopp!" he shouted and, in a swift motion, hit Usopp, sending him sprawling. The sound of the impact echoed in the silent cabin. Everyone was stunned into silence, including Itachi and Zoro. Sanji stepped in, grabbing Luffy to hold him back. "That's enough, Luffy," he said firmly, his voice a mix of authority and concern. Itachi looked at Usopp, lying on the ground, still struggling to stand. "Then I'll leave the CRE," Usopp began, but before he could finish, he suddenly collapsed, falling into a deep sleep. The room was silent, everyone processing what had just happened. Zoro turned to Itachi, his eyes narrowing. "What did you do?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. Itachi's eyes were now 3 tomo red, the Sharingan activated. "I used a genjutsu on him and made him sleep," Itachi explained calmly, his voice steady. Sanji's eyes widened. "Why did you do that?" he asked, his tone a mix of curiosity and concern. "He was going to say he would leave the crew," Itachi replied. "I couldn't let that happen. So I put him to sleep." Nami, noticing Itachi's red eyes, asked, "Is this your devil fruit power?" Her voice was filled with curiosity, her eyes wide. Itachi shook his head. "No, it's a power from my family. It's called the Sharingan." His tone was explanatory, but there was a hint of pride in his voice. Luffy's anger subsided, replaced by curiosity. "So cool!" he exclaimed, his eyes wide with amazement. Chopper quickly checked on Usopp, confirming he was just asleep. Everyone sighed in relief. Luffy looked at Itachi and said, "Thank you, Itachi." Itachi gave a small smile. "I'm part of the crew as well. No need for thanks." His voice was warm, and his smile genuine. Everyone smiled, appreciating Itachi's efforts to keep the crew together. The next day, they gathered to discuss their plan to find Robin. The mood was more hopeful, the bond between them feeling stronger despite the recent tensions. The crew walking in the alley towards Water 7, a city famous for its shipwrights. They hoped to find Robin and build their new ship. As they approached, they were suddenly chased by the locals. "What's happening?" Nami shouted, trying to steer the ship through the narrow canals. "We didn't do anything," Luffy yelled back, confusion written all over his face. The crew looked at their captain, suspecting he might have caused some trouble. The locals were shouting, "You tried to kill Iceberg. You're not forgiven." The crew was shocked. "We didn't do anything," Nami yelled back, trying to reason with them. Zoro, as usual, was heading in the wrong direction, and Itachi stayed close to guide him. "You're terrible with directions, aren't you?" Itachi said with a deadpan expression. Zoro flushed with embarrassment and anger. "Shut up," he retorted, though his tone was more embarrassed than hostile. The crew managed to find a temporary refuge in a high building. They sat down, trying to catch their breath and figure out their next move. Luffy, determined, said, "I'll go see Iceberg and clear this up. You guys stay here." The crew nodded, trusting their captain. Luffy made his way to Iceberg's mansion, entering through a window. He was met with hostility but dodged everyone and reached Iceberg's room. Iceberg, covered in bandages, dismissed his guards. "I want to talk to Luffy," Iceberg said, his voice firm despite his injuries. Luffy, standing at the edge of the room, was ready to hear the truth. The chapter ends here, leaving everyone on edge about what Iceberg would reveal and how it would affect their mission to find Robin and build their new ship. The air in Iceberg's room was thick with tension as Luffy stood before the weary mayor, Iceberg, his pistol aimed with a steady hand. Khalifa, Iceberg's assistant, hovered quietly by the door, her gaze shifting between the two men, curiosity mingled with concern. "Why are you here, Luffy?" Iceberg's voice was strained, the lines of exhaustion etched deep into his face. Luffy, his expression earnest yet resolute, met Iceberg's gaze squarely. "I need to know the truth. What happened? Who did this to you?" Outside, the commotion had quieted somewhat, though the tension among Polly, Rob Lucci, Keiko, and Tilestone still hung palpably in the air. Polly's brows furrowed as he exchanged a quick glance with Rob Lucci, who remained stoic, assessing the situation with a calculated gaze. Iceberg's eyes narrowed slightly, scrutinizing Luffy as if searching for any hint of deception. "Why should I believe you, Straw Hat?" His voice was edged with suspicion and fatigue. Luffy's fists clenched at his sides, his resolve unwavering. "Robin wouldn't do this. She's our Nakama. She's the only one who can read the poneglyphs." Iceberg's lips tightened into a thin line, his grip on the pistol faltering imperceptibly. "She was with masked men," Iceberg interjected, his voice tinged with bitterness. "They want Pluton. They think I have the blueprint." Luffy's mind raced. Pluton, a name that carried weight in the world of ancient weapons. He recalled Iceberg's earlier caution about Robin's loyalties conflicting with his own unyielding trust in his crewmate. "I'll find Robin," Luffy declared, his voice firm and unwavering. "And bring her back." Iceberg's expression softened marginally, though his weariness remained evident. "You can leave," he said finally, lowering the pistol. "But don't mistake this for trust." As Luffy exited Iceberg's room, a mix of gratitude and uncertainty swirled within him. He rejoined his crewmates, where Zoro, Nami, Usopp, Chopper, and Itachi awaited with bated breath Itachi's revelation and discussion. "So, Itachi," Sanji began, leaning forward with genuine interest, "you've got this Sharingan thing. What can it do, exactly?" Itachi, seated calmly among them, clasped his hands together. "The Sharingan is a unique eye technique. It grants me the ability to cast illusions and perceive movements with exceptional clarity," he explained, his voice steady and measured. Usopp's eyes widened with fascination. "Like when you put that illusion on me earlier. That was incredible." Itachi nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Yes, that was a basic illusion. There are more advanced techniques, such as predicting an opponent's movements in combat." Chopper, his curiosity piqued, chimed in eagerly. "Can you really walk on water like a ninja? Or create clones of yourself?" Itachi chuckled softly. "Yes, I can," he confirmed, his demeanor modest yet confident. "But these abilities require extensive training and control." Nami, always pragmatic, interjected with urgent news. "We need to prepare for the high tide. It's coming soon, and we must move to higher ground." Sanji, ever the strategist, nodded in agreement. "Above the water gates would be our safest bet. We don't want to get swept away." Itachi, surprised by the urgency of the impending tide, nodded in agreement with Sanji's assessment. "Agreed. We should make our move now." The crew, united by a sense of impending danger and mutual trust, prepared to relocate swiftly, their interactions with Itachi strengthening their bond as a cohesive unit. As they settled into a temporary refuge above the water gates, the crew's thoughts turned once more to Robin and the unsettling revelations about her actions. Nami, ever the strategist, pondered aloud the motivations behind Robin's seeming betrayal. "I just can't believe Robin would betray us like this," Nami murmured, her brow furrowed with concern. "There has to be more to this story." Usopp, Sanji, and Chopper expressed sympathy and concern, grappling with the idea that their friend might have been coerced or misled into such drastic actions. Zoro, leaning against a railing with his arms crossed, interjected with a touch of realism. "We have to consider the worst-case scenario, though. What if she really has turned against us?" Itachi, his gaze thoughtful yet reserved, drew from his own experiences of sacrifice and duty. "Sometimes, loyalty and betrayal are not so clear-cut," he mused aloud, his voice carrying a weight of understanding. "There could be reasons behind her actions that we don't yet understand." Sanji, reflecting on his past interactions with Robin, remembered her stoic demeanor and the sadness that lurked behind her calm exterior. She always seemed like she was carrying a heavy burden, he recalled quietly, his eyes distant with thought. Itachi nodded in agreement with Sanji's observation. Indeed. Robin may be acting under duress or for a greater cause, a cause she believes in deeply. The crew fell silent, each lost in their own thoughts as they contemplated the complexities of trust and loyalty. Despite the uncertainty surrounding Robin's actions, their shared history and growing camaraderie fortified their resolve to confront the truth together. His crewmates gathered around him, their faces reflecting a mix of anticipation and concern. They waited in silence as Luffy prepared to share what he had learned. Luffy returned to the crew, the weight of Iceberg's revelations heavy on his shoulders. His crewmates gathered around him, their faces reflecting a mix of anticipation and concern. They waited in silence as Luffy prepared to share what he had learned. "Guys," Luffy began, his voice serious and somber, "Iceberg told me something unbelievable. Robin, she was the one who tried to kill him." Gasps of disbelief echoed among the crew. Usopp's eyes widened, Chopper covered his mouth in shock, and Nami's expression darkened with concern. Sanji clenched his fists, struggling to reconcile this news with his memories of Robin. Itachi, quietly observing the crew's reactions, interjected with a probing question. "What is Poneglyph?" he asked, his voice calm but insistent. All eyes turned to Nami, who took a deep breath to steady herself before explaining. Poneglyphs are ancient inscriptions left behind by the ancestors. Some of them contain blueprints for ancient weapons, she began, her voice tinged with seriousness. Itachi nodded thoughtfully. Weapons that could potentially destroy islands or worse, he concluded, his eyes narrowing slightly. Nami nodded gravely. Exactly. It's no wonder they'd be after Robin if she can read poneglyphs, she added, her mind racing with the implications. Itachi, absorbing this new information, connected the dots with a hint of surprise. So they need Robin to access these ancient weapons, specifically Pluton, he mused aloud, his voice trailing off in contemplation. As the crew processed the gravity of the situation, unaware of the eavesdropper nearby, Itachi's sharp instincts suddenly kicked in. Sensing a presence listening in on their conversation, he swiftly drew a kunai and hurled it towards the source of the sound. The blade cut through the air with precision, grazing the eavesdropper's blue hair before embedding itself into the wall. Startled by the sudden attack, the eavesdropper stumbled out into the open. Itachi and Zoro, their senses sharp, demanded the intruder reveal themselves. Out emerged a burly man with a shock of blue hair and an unconventional outfit consisting mostly of his underpants. Beside him stood two women, their expressions a mix of surprise and curiosity. "I'm Frankie," the man announced boldly, scratching his head. "And these are my sisters, Mozu and Kiwi," he added, gesturing to the two women. Luffy, never one to shy away from new faces, stepped forward with a grin. "Nice to meet you, Frankie. Why were you eavesdropping?" he asked bluntly, his curiosity piqued. Frankie rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. "I heard you guys talking about Robin and Pluton," he admitted, his tone serious now. "I might know a thing or two about those." The crew exchanged glances, intrigued by Frankie's sudden appearance and his apparent knowledge of their predicament. "We need to talk," Luffy declared, his expression firm as he gestured for Frankie and his sisters to join them aboard the ship. After Frankie and his sisters, Mozu and Kiwi, joined the Straw Hat Pirates aboard the Going Merry, the atmosphere aboard the ship was tense yet charged with determination. They gathered in a circle on the deck, facing each other with eyes filled with resolve and questions. Luffy, always direct and eager for answers, spoke up first. "Frankie, tell us everything you know about Robin and Pluton." Frankie took a deep breath, his expression grave. "You all know what Pluton is, right?" He glanced around at the crew, receiving nods of affirmation. "Let's go back to the past then," Shall we? Sanji and Usopp exchanged uneasy glances, but Itachi interjected calmly, his Sharingan activated and focused. The past is crucial. It can illuminate our path forward, he stated with a hint of authority. Frankie nodded, recognizing the weight in Itachi's words. All right, here's what happened, he began, his voice tinged with bitterness. Tom was like a father to us, the best shipbuilder in Water 7. We were all happy, working under him alongside his wife, Kokoro. Nami chimed in, recalling their encounter with Kokoro at the Water 7 rail station. I remember her. She seemed kind. Frankie nodded sadly. Yeah, she was. But then came Spondum, he continued, venom seeping into his voice. He was a former member of CP5, working under the world government. A collective gasp filled the air, everyone except Luffy, Itachi, Zoro, and Sanji visibly shocked by this revelation. Itachi's expression remained impassive, though he was clearly absorbing every detail with intense focus. So, Spondum approached Tom for the Pluton blueprint, Itachi surmised calmly. Frankie nodded grimly. Yes. Tom refused, of course. But Spondum used my warship against us, attacking Water 7 and falsely accusing Tom of treason. His voice tightened with emotion. Tom was executed. All eyes turned to Zoro, who spoke up with his characteristic directness. So, you're saying Spondum is behind this? Frankie nodded again, his fists clenched in anger and determination. Now they're after Iceberg. He was shot as a warning. Itachi's voice cut through the tension once more. So, they'll likely attack again, he concluded, his tone grave. Especially with the weather indicating a nighttime assault, before the tide rises. Sanji nodded in agreement. Itachi's right. We need to move quickly. Luffy, cracking his knuckles in anticipation, interrupted with his trademark determination. It doesn't matter. We'll bring Robin back, no matter what. And we'll beat whoever stands in our way. A ripple of determination spread through the crew. Itachi couldn't help but notice the interaction between Frankie and his sisters, Mozu and Kiwi. They stood close together, their bond evident in their supportive gestures and shared glances. Itachi's gaze flickered briefly with a grim expression, a fleeting reminder of his own past with Sasuke and the complexities of sibling relationships. Nami, Zoro, and Sanji noticed Itachi's somber expression and exchanged concerned glances. Hey, Itachi, you alright? Nami asked gently, her voice tinged with empathy. Itachi blinked, momentarily lost in memories before focusing on his crewmates. He offered a small, reassuring smile. Yes, just old memories, he replied quietly. No need to worry about it. The crew nodded understandingly, silently acknowledging Itachi's unspoken thoughts. They turned their attention back to Frankie as he continued to recount the events leading up to the present crisis. Frankie turned to his sisters, Mozu and Kiwi, with concern etched on his face. You should go to the upper levels. It's dangerous here. Mozu shook her head defiantly. No, we want to stay with our brothers, she insisted, glancing at Frankie with unwavering loyalty. Frankie sighed, but a small smile played on his lips. All right, but be careful. There are rules in our family, after all, he said softly, his gaze lingering on his sisters with affection. Kiwi nodded, a determined glint in her eyes. We have to stick together. Frankie then turned to the crew with a serious expression. Where's your ship, Straw Hat? Nami's face darkened slightly. It's in bad shape, beyond repair, she admitted reluctantly. Usopp's expression turned grim as he recalled the sorry state of the Going Merry. Yeah, it's beyond anything I can fix, he added sadly. Frankie nodded thoughtfully. I'll try to restore it one last time, he said decisively. And then, I'll build you a new ship. Usopp's eyes widened with gratitude and a hint of tears. Really? That would be amazing. Luffy grinned broadly, slapping Usopp on the back. Thanks, Frankie. We're counting on you. With their plan set in motion, the crew made their way towards Iceberg's mansion. Unbeknownst to them, in a secluded location not far away, masked figures stood in shadowy silence. Among them, Robin stood with an inscrutable expression. The lead figure spoke quietly, their words carrying an ominous weight. You know what to do, the masked figure instructed Robin, their tone firm. After you've dealt with Iceberg, bring us the blueprint. Play smart, Robin. You know the consequences if you fail. Robin's brow furrowed slightly, a hint of tension betraying her thoughts. She knew the gravity of her mission and the risks involved. Her mind raced with conflicting emotions: loyalty to her crewmates and the weight of her past decisions. Back aboard the Going Merry, the crew navigated through the bustling streets of Water 7, drawing curious glances from the locals. They moved with purpose, each member deep in their thoughts and preparations for the impending confrontation. As they approached Iceberg's mansion, a sense of urgency hung in the air. The crew braced themselves for what lay ahead, knowing that their next actions could determine the course of their journey and the safety of their friends. Inside Iceberg's mansion, tensions ran high as Iceberg himself prepared for the inevitable attack. He stood resolute, his mind racing with strategies to protect himself and the valuable information he possessed. Khalifa, his loyal assistant, moved quietly around him, her expression one of concern and determination. Outside, on the mansion's perimeter, Polly and the galley law foreman stood watchful, their eyes scanning the surroundings for any signs of impending danger. They were prepared to defend their leader and friend at all costs, their loyalty unwavering in the face of uncertainty. Back on the Going Merry, Itachi leaned against the railing, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. His Sharingan eye glowed faintly, a testament to his readiness and vigilance. He sensed the approaching threat, his instincts honed by years of training and experience. Sanji approached Itachi quietly, a cigarette dangling from his lips. You seem calm, even in the face of this, he remarked, his tone respectful yet curious. Itachi turned to Sanji, his expression unreadable yet tinged with a hint of weariness. I've faced similar challenges before, he replied cryptically. But this time, I fight alongside comrades I trust. Sanji nodded knowingly, understanding the weight of Itachi's words. Yeah, we've got each other's backs, he affirmed, a sense of camaraderie evident in his voice. Meanwhile, Zoro stood at the ship's bow, his swords gleaming in the sunlight. His mind was focused on the battle ahead, his senses attuned to every movement and sound. He was prepared to unleash his full strength to protect his captain and crewmates. Usopp busied himself with checking his ammunition, his face set in determination. He had faced countless dangers alongside the Straw Hat Pirates, but this new threat posed a different kind of challenge. His fingers moved deftly as he prepared his weapons, his thoughts racing with strategies and contingencies. Nami approached Luffy, her expression serious yet filled with unwavering determination. We need to be ready for anything, she reminded him, her voice carrying a sense of urgency. Iceberg's counting on us to protect him. Luffy nodded solemnly, his fists clenched in determination. Yeah, we'll keep him safe, he declared, his gaze unwavering. And we'll bring Robin back, no matter what. The crew assembled outside Iceberg's mansion, their resolve palpable in the air. They exchanged knowing glances, their bond strengthened by shared experiences and unwavering trust. Inside the mansion, Iceberg stood before a map of Water 7, his finger tracing the city's intricate layout. He knew the stakes were high, his every decision critical to the outcome of the impending confrontation. Khalifa approached Iceberg quietly, her presence a comforting presence amidst the turmoil. We're ready for them, she assured him, her voice steady despite the underlying tension. Iceberg nodded, his expression resolute. Thank you, Khalifa, he replied gratefully. We must be prepared for whatever comes. As night fell over Water 7, the crew of the Going Merry stood vigil outside Iceberg's mansion. The air was thick with anticipation, each member poised for action at a moment's notice. Suddenly, a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, their movements swift and purposeful. It was Robin, her face a mask of determination as she approached Iceberg's mansion with purpose. The crew tensed, their eyes fixed on Robin with a mixture of relief and apprehension. They knew that her allegiance was torn between loyalty to her crewmates and the weight of her past. Robin paused before the mansion's gates, her mind racing with conflicting emotions. She knew the gravity of her mission and the risks involved, yet her resolve remained steadfast. Inside the mansion, Iceberg and Khalifa stood ready, their eyes trained on the approaching figure. They knew that the next moments would determine the course of their fate and the safety of Water 7. With their plan set in motion, the crew made their way towards Iceberg's mansion. Unbeknownst to them, in a secluded location, masked figures stood in shadowy silence. Among them, Robin stood with an inscrutable expression. The lead figure spoke quietly, their words carrying an ominous weight. You know what to do, the masked figure instructed Robin, their tone firm. After you've dealt with Iceberg, bring us the blueprint. Play smart, Robin. You know the consequences if you fail. Robin's brow furrowed slightly, a hint of tension betraying her thoughts. The stage was set for the next move in this unfolding drama. Robin stood in the dimly lit room alongside a masked figure, waiting for their orders. The atmosphere was heavy with tension, the air thick with anticipation. The den mushy rang, breaking the silence. The voice on the other end was cold and authoritative. You are ready to engage. Begin the operation. Robin nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of her task. The masked figure beside her remained silent, his presence ominous. They moved swiftly, each step bringing them closer to the inevitable confrontation. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, the Straw Hat Pirates were on high alert. Nami, Sanji, Itachi, and Zoro stood ready, watching the perimeter. Itachi's keen eyes scanned the surroundings, noting the guards stationed around the mansion. We will wait here until the fight starts, he advised, his voice calm and measured. The guards are expecting us. We need the element of surprise. Suddenly, a loud explosion echoed through the night, drawing everyone's attention. Itachi turned to Luffy. Are you ready? He asked, but to his amusement, Luffy was already sprinting towards the mansion. What is he doing? Sanji muttered, exasperated. Don't waste time, Itachi urged. Let's hurry. Inside the mansion, Iceberg and his assistant, Khalifa, were in his office, surrounded by his most trusted foremen, Polly, Keku, Rob Lucci, and Tilestone. Iceberg called Polly over and whispered urgently, I need to speak with you in private. The others nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation, and stepped outside. Iceberg handed Polly a key. This is for the blueprint of Pluton. Keep it safe. They are after it? Polly nodded solemnly. I'll protect it with my life. As he left the room, a hidden door in the wall slid open, revealing Robin and the masked man. Iceberg's eyes widened in shock. That's how you got in last time, he realized. The masked man turned to Robin. Do your work, he ordered coldly before slipping back into the shadows. Outside, Luffy approached a side gate guarded by local townspeople. Sorry about this, he muttered, before shouting, Gum Gum Pistol. His punch knocked the guards aside effortlessly. Meanwhile, Zoro, Nami, Sanji, Chopper, and Itachi approached the main gate. They spotted the masked man moving swiftly along the wall. Nami gasped. He got away. Itachi's eyes narrowed, his Sharingan gleaming. No, that's not a he. That's a she, and I know her quite well, he corrected calmly. He turned to Nami. You know the assistant who works with Iceberg? Nami nodded. Yes, I know her. That blonde girl, right? Itachi nodded again. Nami's eyes widened as she connected the dots. Don't tell me that she's the masked man. Sorry, woman. He nodded in confirmation. Sanji asked, how do you know? Itachi answered, it's because of my eyes. I can sense her. Nami asked, is there any possibility that you might be wrong? Itachi looked in the direction where they had last seen the masked woman. The chances are very slim. I'm 99% sure. Before they could react, more local guards rushed towards them. Zoro unsheathed his swords and with a swift swing, knocked several guards out. Sanji followed, delivering powerful kicks, while Nami used her clim attack to create gusts of wind. Itachi formed hand seals and unleashed a large fireball. Katon, Fireball Jutsu. The fireball exploded, scattering the remaining guards. Zoro grinned at Itachi. You're pretty strong. Itachi nodded in acknowledgement. Chopper checked the unconscious guards. They're just knocked out, nothing serious. They moved towards Iceberg's room with urgency. Polly, meanwhile, had reached the secret room where the blueprint was stored. As he unlocked the door, he felt a presence behind him and turned to see two masked figures. He was stunned. Back on the ground floor, Itachi suggested, you should go through the corridor. I'll take a different route. Sanji raised an eyebrow. How so? Itachi demonstrated by walking up the wall, defying gravity. The crew watched in awe. Right, you're a ninja, Nami remarked, shaking her head. Focus, guys. Let's move. Itachi created a shadow clone. This will help guide you, he said, looking at Zoro. Stay with the clone, or you'll get lost. Zoro scowled. Shut up, he snapped, while Sanji chuckled. As Itachi neared Iceberg's room, he saw two shadows moving inside. He paused, listening to the conversation. Why did you betray your crew? Iceberg's voice was strained with a mix of anger and confusion. Robin, her gun aimed at Iceberg, replied, I had to. Otherwise, my crew and this city would have been destroyed. Iceberg's expression softened slightly. What do you mean? Robin's voice trembled. If I didn't cooperate, they would have called a buster call on the Straw Hats. In a buster call, they destroy everything: men, women, children. Just like they did to O'Hara. The name slipped from her lips, and she visibly tensed. Itachi chose that moment to act. He burst through the window, startling Robin, who pointed her gun at him. Who are you? She demanded. Itachi's gaze was steady and sympathetic. I am Itachi Uchiha, a new member of the Straw Hat Pirates. I came to rescue you. Robin's hands shook, but before she could react, the masked man entered the room. Shoot him. He ordered Robin, but she hesitated, looking between the masked man and Itachi. Itachi's Sharingan spun, changing into the Mangekyo Sharingan. The masked man froze, trapped in Itachi's Tsukuyomi. He found himself surrounded by multiple Itachis, each wielding a sword. What is this? The masked man gasped, feeling real pain as the swords pierced him. My body is supposed to be invulnerable. The masked man thought. Itachi coldly stated, you are under my illusion, trapped for 48 hours. The masked man felt every stab, and though only a minute had passed, he was already panicking and screaming. In the real world, only a few seconds had passed, but to the masked man, it felt like hours. He screamed in agony, get away from me. Robin and Iceberg watched in horror and confusion. What's happening? Robin asked Itachi, her voice shaky. He is under my genjutsu, an illusion that traps him in a nightmare, Itachi explained calmly. After what seemed like an eternity, the masked man collapsed, panting heavily. What are you, A demon. He rasped. Itachi shrugged. Say what you want, but you used one of my crew. Now, you will pay for what you've done. Robin watched in awe and curiosity. She noticed Itachi giving her a warm smile, which made her feel ashamed. She hid her eyes from him. Itachi, however, gave her a reassuring look. For the first time in a long while, he thought she was very beautiful. The last time he had felt this way was for Izumi, but remembering what he did to her, he composed himself. Turning to Iceberg, Itachi's expression grew serious. There is bad news for you too. You are going to be betrayed. Iceberg's eyes widened in disbelief. Who? You'll find out soon enough, Itachi replied enigmatically, his eyes reflecting the gravity of the situation. Chapter 6, The Betrayal Revealed. Polly stood in the secret room, his heart racing as he faced two masked men. Shocked, he quickly grabbed his pipe-hitch knives and attacked, but the masked men dodged his strikes effortlessly. Damn it, who are you guys? Polly shouted, frustration and confusion lacing his voice. Just as Polly prepared for another attack, Luffy burst through the window, shattering the glass. Polly! Luffy shouted, landing on the floor with a thud. He quickly assessed the situation, seeing the two masked men. He launched his gum-gum pistol, but the masked men dodged his attack like paper. He used gum-gum bazooka again, but they dodged it. Luffy was frustrated and shouted, "Stay still, you bastard!" But the masked man dodged and landed a hit on Luffy's face. One of the masked men spoke to the other, "There's no time. We need to go." The other nodded and used a U-shaped steel rod to trap Luffy and Polly to the floor, pinning their hands and legs. The masked men seized the blueprint and examined it. "These are fake." One of them growled, furious. Polly laughed. "I didn't know they were fake either." Ignoring them, the masked men moved towards Iceberg's room. Outside, a masked woman was using her whip to knock out the locals, clearing the way. She too headed towards the room. Meanwhile, Zoro, Sanji, Itachi's clone, Chopper, and Nami were running through the corridors. As always, Zoro took all the wrong turns, and Itachi's clone had to guide him. Nami sighed in relief, "Thank God Itachi joined our crew, or in this big mansion, Zoro would be lost forever." Zoro, angry, snapped at Sanji, who was laughing, and at Itachi, who was continuously nagging him. They finally reached Iceberg's room and saw a large, fat masked man fainted on the floor. They also saw Itachi, Robin, and Iceberg. Zoro and Itachi's clone entered together. Iceberg, shocked, exclaimed, "There are two Itachis." Robin, also surprised, watched as the clone poofed into smoke. Itachi explained, "It was my clone, one of my techniques." Robin, still curious, asked with a stoic face, "What is your devil fruit power?" Itachi shook his head, "It's not a devil fruit power. It's my Uchiha family ability." His eyes darkened as he spoke, and both Robin and Zoro noticed the depth of sorrow in his eyes. Robin couldn't help but think that his eyes seemed to have witnessed many deaths and losses. Robin was openly staring at him. Itachi looked at her and showed his red eyes. One thought came to her mind, his eyes are beautiful, and he is also good looking as well. Back with Luffy and Polly, Luffy used his rubber abilities to free himself. Polly looked at him and said, "Is your devil fruit power related to rubber?" Luffy replied, "Yes, I ate the gum-gum fruit." Polly looked at him and said, "Sorry for accusing you of murdering my friend." Luffy gave him a big smile and said, "No need, Shia-he." Using his power, he removed the metal rods that were pinning Polly. Polly helped him and said, "Let's go to Iceberg's room." They started running towards Iceberg's room. In Iceberg's room, Itachi, Robin, Sanji, Nami, Zoro, Chopper, Iceberg, and the fainted masked man were all gathered. Suddenly, 3 more masked figures entered. They removed their masks, revealing themselves as Khalifa, Keku, and Rob Lucci, Iceberg's trusted men. Iceberg, stunned, turned to Itachi. "How did you know they would betray me?" Itachi closed his eyes. "My eyes helped me identify your assistant, Khalifa." Khalifa, taken aback but quickly recovering, maintained her composure. Rob Lucci began to speak. "You are observant, Itachi, but we don't have much time." He attacked Nami, but Zoro blocked it with his sword. The impact was strong, throwing Zoro toward the door. Everyone shouted, "Zoro!" Sanji ran and kicked Rob, but it had little effect, and Rob threw him aside. Zoro recovered and engaged Keku in a sword fight. Keku sneered, "I'm a swordsman too. Fight me." Rob instructed Keku, "We don't have time." He used his finger pistol technique aimed at Zoro. Itachi, wide-eyed, shouted, "Zoro, dodge!" But it was too late. Zoro was knocked out and thrown out the window. Robin looking in the horror but can't do anything. Nami and Chopper were in tears. Itachi, enraged, used his fireball jutsu, but Rob dodged it. Rob taunted, "You can use fire, nice." The fat masked man, still trembling, warned, "Don't look into his eyes. He's a demon." Rob narrowed his eyes at his teammate, who was fainting in fear, and ordered him to make a door. He then ominously added, "I think your friend is still alive." Iceberg's eyes widened in realization. At that moment, Luffy barged in, starting a fight with his gum-gum pistol. Keku intervened, and Sanji also joined the fray. Khalifa, seeing an opportunity, used her whip to knock Sanji out of the mansion. Itachi, having had enough, used Amaterasu, his eye bleeding from the strain. Black flames engulfed Keku, and within moments, there was nothing left but ashes. Luffy and many others were shocked. The big fat man was scared and exclaimed, "You demon!" Khalifa, shocked, shouted, "Keku!" Rob, witnessing his comrade's demise before his eyes, was enraged. Luffy and Rob refocused their attention on each other. Luffy used his gum-gum bazooka and attacked Rob. Rob transformed into his leopard form and delivered a powerful punch, creating a shockwave. Itachi, wide-eyed, realized the strength of the punch, but he got distracted and was also hit by Rob, sending him flying into another tall building. Chopper, in tears, screamed, "Itachi!" Nami also shouted, "Itachi!" Robin watched him in shock and begged, "Rob, please don't do this. I will come to an ice lobby." After looking at Robin's scared face, he smirked and instructed the masked man named Bluno to make a door. He turned back and announced, "In 3 minutes, this mansion will blow up." Everyone was shocked. Robin, with tears in her eyes, apologized to her crew before leaving with Rob. Nami shouted after her, "Robin, please come back." But Robin only responded, "I'm sorry, guys," before disappearing. After the massive explosion engulfed the mansion in flames, Nami was knocked unconscious and jumped from the 3rd floor. All the local people gathered around her, recognizing her as being from the Straw Hat crew. "She's from the Straw Hats, right?" one local asked. "Yes, that's her. I think she got caught in the blast," another replied. "What should we do?" a third local questioned. "Let's capture her and turn her over to the Marines." They tried to kill Iceberg. Chopper helped Iceberg out, and all the locals looked on in shock and began to assist them. Iceberg intervened, saying, "They didn't try to kill me. They helped me. Please, don't do anything. Just try to find them." The locals nodded in understanding and dispersed to search for the Straw Hat crew members. At Gate 3, Usopp, Frankie, his sisters, and the Frankie family were gathered around the Mary, feverishly working to prepare her for what might be her final voyage. Frankie, his hands on the ship's worn-out hull, turned to Usopp with a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Why are you so determined to fix her, Usopp?" Franky asked, his voice tinged with genuine curiosity. Usopp paused, his gaze drifting over the familiar curves of the Mary. "She was there with us from the start, on our journey through the Grand Line. This ship, she was a gift from someone very dear to me." Franky's eyes softened, and a tear rolled down his cheek. "You're a sentimental one, bro," he muttered, his voice thick with emotion. Usopp chuckled nervously, scratching the back of his head. "Thanks, but why are you crying, Franky?" The Franky family, wiping tears from their eyes, chimed in unison, "We're not crying, you jerk." Reflecting for a moment, Usopp recalled a poignant memory. "Back in Skypiea, I saw a child in a yellow raincoat diligently working on the ship. He said, 'Don't worry, I'll fix her.'" Franky's attention sharpened as he listened intently. "You saw Klabauterman," he murmured, a mixture of reverence and wonder in his voice. "It's said that when a crew truly loves their ship, Klabauterman appears to repair it." Moved by the memory and the significance of the ship's presence in their lives, Usopp embraced the Mary tightly, tears welling up in his eyes. Suddenly, the door swung open, breaking the solemn moment. Rob Lucci, Khalifa, Bluno, and Keku stood in the doorway, their presence casting a dark shadow over the scene. Rob's piercing glare cut through the air as he demanded, "Where is the blueprint, Franky?" Until next time.